Hi there, today we're going to unpack your criteria sheet for your Multicultural Australia essay in order for you to fully understand what you can do to achieve the best possible results in this task. Okay, so the first criteria that we're going to have a look at is the knowledge of contextual factors. This is basically looking at your ability to write an essay and understand what an essay is. So the first criteria here is looking at using patterns and conventions of an essay to achieve particular purposes. Essentially, this is what we're looking at for the intro, 3 body paragraphs and a conclusion, and making sure you've included all 3 of those aspects. Your introduction needs to have a clear thesis that you're referring to throughout, and then your 3 body paragraphs need to have evidence that link to this thesis and support this. You should also be writing in third person because it is an essay. And you should be using somewhat analytical language and a little bit of persuasive language to get your point across. The second criteria is selecting and synthesizing relevant subject matter. So here you really should be looking at making sure you're picking relevant festivals to support your thesis. So making sure you've picked one from class or one that is actually celebrated in Australia and not just a random festival from around the world. You need to have a clear understanding of what that festival is. So the subject matter needs to be clear and you need to know what that is. And then make sure that your arguments that you're using with that festival are relevant as well to support why festivals promote multiculturalism in Australia. The third one is explaining information, ideas and arguments with analysis and evaluation. So here we're looking for your ability to actually analyse your arguments and explain the why and the how of why they promote multiculturalism in Australia. So yes, you might say something like because of the food, but you need to explicitly explain why or how that's helping promote multiculturalism. And then the last one here is substantiating opinions with relevant evidence. Again, this is making sure you have clear evidence within the festivals that you've chosen and you're not just saying that something like Chinese New Year does promote multiculturalism because it's from another culture. That's not enough. You need to actually have relevant evidence to support that and that you're actually explaining that specifically. So if you're talking about food, perhaps as an argument, you want to be talking about the specific kind of food that they have and explaining that in a little bit more detail. Now the difference between your A, B and your C is in the highlighted words here. So for the first criteria, we're looking for consistently using those patterns throughout. B is that you're using them, and C is in the main. Okay, so you need to make sure that for an A, you're consistently using those things. Selecting and synthesizing your subject matter, so explaining basically in depth is synthesizing. B is that you've selected sufficient relevant subject matter, you're meeting the word count. And C is that you've just selected, okay? You might be hitting that lower word count rather than the higher word count, and you are not going into depth. Same with your analysis and evaluation. Okay, you're explaining all of your evidence rather than just with some analysis throughout. And then the last one, again, is relevant evidence, whereas a C would be very basic evidence where you're just stating something and not really explaining it. Okay, the second section is knowledge of textual features. This is basically your ability to construct an essay and write the essay. Okay, so all about your sentencing, vocab, spelling, punctuation, all of those things. So the first one is about sequencing and organising subject matter. So this relates to having your arguments put in a logical order. Okay, so not jumping back and forth between similar arguments. All right, make sure that they all link and flow and have some kind of link throughout. And the difference between an A is having consistently doing that throughout. B is just sequencing and organising it, and C is in the main. The second one is consistently using cohesive ties to link ideas. So cohesive and link are your hint words there. Okay, so this is referring to connective and linking words in between your sentences. and also in between each paragraph. Also linking back to your thesis throughout, okay? You were given a handout that had a lot of connective words on there and also some sentence starters that would help you. So make sure you're referring to them and try to utilize them. Again, consistently for an A. B is that you are using them, but perhaps not as much as you could be, and C is only sometimes using them. Your vocab is the next criteria. For an A, you want to be using a range of vocab. So try and vary the words that you use, okay? Instead of just saying the same thing over and over, try and vary that. You also want to be using festival-specific words, okay? So make sure you're looking at the festival and try to use vocabulary that's specific to that festival. Again, a range of for an A, whereas a B is just using suitable vocabulary, especially for an essay as well, and then a C is just in the main, okay? Your next one is about your sentence structures, okay? So controlling your sentencing, okay? Making sure your sentences make sense, make sure they're clear, make sure you're punctuating them in the right spot in order to create a proper sentence, okay? You should also have a range of sentences, okay, not just all simple sentences. You want a range of simple, compound, complex sentences, okay, and for an A, you're controlling most of those. For a B, you are generally maintaining control, and then for a C, you're just using, okay, and you can have some lapses in accuracy, but that's for your C grade, okay. The next dot point is maintaining control of paragraphing and most punctuation. So this refers to your teal paragraphing structure. Okay, that would also come in up here as well. So following that teal structure that's listed on your task sheet, making sure you have a topic, sentence, evidence and elaboration, and then linking back. Okay, also making sure that you have paragraphs and you're separating your paragraphs. And making sure that they are punctuated correctly to create those correct sentences as well. Okay, so maintaining for an A, generally maintaining for a B, okay, with most of your punctuation correct and controlled, and then for a C, it's in the main, we can see that you've attempted to at least separate into paragraphs. Okay, for a D, you would not have any paragraphs at all. The last one is just your spelling, so really controlling your spelling throughout, especially editing your work, making sure you haven't got silly errors in there. Using spell check on words sometimes isn't enough, because sometimes you may have spelt a word correctly, but it may be the wrong word, okay? So you need to read through yourself or have someone else edit it as well. The last criteria is knowledge and understanding of texts. Okay, so this is basically your ability to construct an essay with purpose. Okay, so you need to be using formal language throughout because it's talking about your language choices. So making language choices to invite readers, listeners and viewers to take up positions in relation to text. So you're basically wanting your viewers or your readers to take up the same position as you that festivals do or do not promote multiculturalism in Australia, and you need to convince them of that. So formal language needs to be used, third person only, no first person or opinions, okay? Your modality needs to be clear, so modality refers to your bossy, strong words, okay? And you need to have a clear viewpoint throughout that you're linking to, so that yes, they do promote multiculturalism, or no, that they don't. Okay, so make sure your thesis and your argument is always linked back to and is always strong and clear throughout. So you either are making those language choices, or you could be generally doing it, or just only sometimes doing it. So make sure in every paragraph you're making it clear what your argument is. If you have any further questions about what any of these mean, or if you want to break this down a little bit further, you're welcome to come and see me. Happy writing!